Commander Jake Morrison looked out the window of his small ship and felt his breath catch in his throat. The space station ahead was bigger than anything he had ever seen. It was like a small city floating in space, with thousands of lights blinking across its surface. Ships of all shapes and sizes moved around it like busy insects. "That's Nexus Prime," said Admiral Lisa Carter, standing beside him, "the center of the Galactic Council. 3,000 years of peace started here." Jake nodded, but said nothing. He was nervous. Earth had only discovered faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. Now they were about to meet with alien species that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Their ship, the U.E.'s Defiance, looked like a toy next to the massive alien vessels around them. The docking bay was enormous. Jake's team walked down the ramp and saw creatures they had only dreamed about. There were tall, thin beings with blue skin and large heads. Others looked like walking trees with glowing eyes. Some floated in the air without any visible legs. A reptilian creature approached them. It was about 7 feet tall, with green scales and yellow eyes. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," it said in perfect English. "I am Ambassador Velcris of the Veltar Confederation. The Council is waiting for you." They walked through long corridors filled with beings from across the galaxy. Jake noticed that many of them stared at the humans with curious looks. Some whispered to each other as they passed. The council chamber was a huge circular room with seats arranged in tiers. Hundreds of different species sat in the seats, all looking down at the center where Jake and his team now stood. The air felt heavy with age and importance. A voice echoed through the chamber. "The Galactic Council recognizes the delegation from Earth." The speaker was a tall, graceful being with silver skin and large, wise eyes. "I am Counselor Zetharoon of the Zephyrian Republic. We have called this emergency session to discuss a threat to all free worlds." Jake felt his stomach tighten. When Earth had received the invitation to join the Council, they thought it was just a diplomatic meeting. Now, it sounded like something much more serious. "For 30 years, the Krillian Empire has been quiet," Zetharoon continued. "We hoped they had given up their ways of war and conquest. We were wrong. 3 days ago, they attacked the mining world. Of Kepler-7, 8 million souls were lost." A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a planet covered in smoke and fire. Cities were destroyed. Ships lay broken on the ground like dead animals. "The Krillians are not like other species," said another council member, this one looking like a walking crystal formation. "They are born warriors. Each one stands 12 feet tall and has natural armor that can stop most weapons. Their claws carry deadly poison. Their ships are weapons of war, built only to destroy." Jake had heard stories about the Krillians from the first human explorers. They were described as monsters from nightmares. No one who had fought them had ever won. "How many ships do they have?" asked Admiral Carter. "Our intelligence suggests over 10,000 warships," replied Zetharoon. "Each one carries 1,000 warriors. They have conquered 400 star systems in the past 1,000 years. Every species that has tried to stop them has been wiped out completely." The chamber fell silent. Jake could hear his own heartbeat in the quiet. "What about your own fleets?" Jake asked. "Surely with all the council species working together, ... A bitter laugh came from somewhere in the chamber. "The Luminari are a peaceful people," said a being that seemed to be made of living light. "We have no weapons of war. The Veltar are traders, not fighters. The Zephyrians are wise and ancient, but their warriors died out long ago. We have tried forming armies before," added Zetharoon. "The results were always the same. The Krillians are too strong, too fierce, too hungry for battle. They live for war. We live for peace. In every conflict, they have won." "Then why did you invite us here?" Admiral Carter asked. The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Setharoon spoke. Because we are desperate. The new Krillian Emperor, Vex Talon the Ruthless, has declared his intention to conquer all remaining free worlds. He has begun moving his fleets. Our spies report that he plans to attack the Council homeworlds within 1 year. Jake felt cold. Earth was barely part of this galactic community, and already they were facing extinction. We know humans are young, continued the Zephyrian. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. Your ships are small and weak, but you are the only species that has joined the Council in the past century. You are our only hope for new ideas, new ways of fighting. Admiral Carter stepped forward. What exactly are you asking of us? Join our defense fleet. Add your ships to ours. Help us make a final stand against the Krillian Empire. Jake looked around the chamber. He saw fear in the eyes of beings from across the galaxy. These were species that had survived for thousands of years, and they were terrified. How many ships can the Council provide? Carter asked. 3,000 of our finest vessels, replied Setharoon with pride. And how many can Earth contribute? Jake felt embarrassed. 30 ships, Admiral. That's our entire deep space fleet. Some of the Council members made sounds that might have been laughter or despair. Jake couldn't tell which. 30 ships against 10,000, murmured the crystal. Being, it seems hopeless. But Admiral Carter stood straighter. Counselor Zetharoon, Earth accepts your invitation. We will stand with the free worlds against the Krillian Empire. The chamber erupted in surprised voices. Jake heard translations flowing through the air in dozens of languages. Admiral, Jake whispered, 30 ships cannot make a difference. Against such odds, Carter looked at him with steady eyes. Maybe not, Commander, but humans have never run from a fight. No matter how bad the odds looked, we'll find a way. As they left the Council chamber, Jake thought about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests, about the billions of people who had no idea their world was about to become a target for the galaxy's most feared warriors. The next morning, Jake stood in the docking bay and watched as Earth's small fleet arrived. 30 ships, each one carrying brave men and women who had volunteered for what everyone believed was a suicide mission. They looked so small next to the massive Council vessels that surrounded them. Captain Ben Rodriguez climbed out of his ship, the Hughes Phoenix, and saluted Admiral Carter. Earth Fleet reporting for duty, Admiral. We're ready to show these aliens how humans fight. Jake hoped Rodriguez was right, because in a few weeks, they would face an enemy that had never been defeated, an enemy that lived only for war and conquest, an enemy that considered mercy a weakness and surrender impossible. The Krillian Empire was coming, and the galaxy's last hope rested with 30 human ships and their crews. Jake looked up at the stars and wondered if any of them would live to see Earth again. Captain Ben Rodriguez gripped the arms of his command chair as the Hughes Phoenix dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The Sigma Draconis system stretched out before them, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The Krillian fleet filled space like a dark cloud. 8,000 ships, each 1 kilometer long and covered in weapon turrets. They moved in perfect formation, like a school of deadly fish. At the center was the largest ship Rodriguez had ever seen, the Dreadnought Eternal, a 3-kilometer monster that looked like it could destroy planets. Jesus Christ, whispered Lieutenant Amy Thompson from her position at the tactical station. How are we supposed to fight that? The Council fleet had seemed impressive back at Nexus Prime. 3,000 ships from dozens of species, all working together for the first time in centuries. But now, facing the Krillian Armada, they looked like children's toys. All ships maintain formation, came Admiral Carter's voice over the communication system. Remember, we're here to buy time for the evacuation of the outer colonies. Every minute we hold them here saves lives. Rodriguez watched the tactical display as both fleets moved into position. The Krillians didn't hurry. They knew they had already won. Their ships spread out in a classic battle formation that had crushed enemies for 1,000 years. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Krillian flagship," reported Communications Officer Pete Davis. "Put it on screen," Rodriguez ordered. The main display showed a creature from humanity's worst nightmares. Emperor Vextalon stood 12 feet tall, his dark scales gleaming under the ship's lights. His yellow eyes burned with hatred, and his claws were as long as knives. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding stone. "Pathetic insects of the Council," he growled. "You bring your weak ships to face the might of the Krillian Empire. Today, you will learn why the galaxy fears us. Today, you will all die screaming." The transmission ended, and immediately the Krillian fleet began its attack. The first wave hit like a hammer. Plasma beams and void torpedoes filled space with deadly light. Rodriguez watched in horror as 3 Council ships simply vanished, torn apart by weapons that could crack planets. "All human ships, break formation," ordered Admiral Carter. "Scatter pattern 7. Don't give them easy targets." The human ships split apart, moving in different directions. The other Council species tried to maintain their traditional battle lines, but the Krillian assault was too fierce. Ships exploded one after another. Their crews dying in the cold vacuum of space. Lieutenant Thompson studied her instruments with fierce concentration. "Captain, I'm seeing something strange in their attack patterns." "What do you mean?" Rodriguez asked, dodging debris from a destroyed Veltar cruiser. "They're following the same tactics they've used for centuries. Same formations, same attack sequences. It's like they're reading from a playbook that never changes." Rodriguez frowned. "That doesn't make sense. If it works, why change it?" "That's just it, sir. It works against everyone else because everyone else fights the same way. Traditional fleet formations, honor-bound combat, fighting ship to ship in straight lines. But what if we don't fight that way?" An idea began to form in Rodriguez's mind. He opened a channel to the other human ships. "All Phoenix Squadron vessels, this is Captain Rodriguez. We're going to try something different." "Ben, what are you doing?" came Admiral Carter's worried voice. "Something the Krillians won't expect, Admiral. Thompson, plot a course around the edge of the battle. Maximum stealth." The human ships pulled away from the main battle. Admiral Corthul of the Zephyrian Navy immediately protested. "Human vessels, return to formation. You cannot abandon the battle." "We're not abandoning anything," Rodriguez replied. "We're going hunting." While the Council fleet died under the Krillian assault, the 30 human ships moved through space like ghosts. They stayed away from the main battle, using asteroids and debris for cover. "Sir, I'm detecting Krillian supply ships behind their main fleet," reported Thompson. "Fuel tankers, ammunition carriers, medical vessels. They're completely undefended." Rodriguez smiled grimly. "Of course they are. The Krillians would never attack supply ships. They probably think it's dishonorable." "It is dishonorable," came a new voice. Captain Helen Brooks of the UE Shadow had joined the conversation. "Good thing we humans don't care much about honor when people are dying." The human ships split into small groups. Each group targeted different supply ships. They used tactics no galactic species had ever seen: hit and run attacks, ambushes from multiple directions, targeting non-combat vessels to cripple the enemy's ability to fight. Rodriguez's group found a massive fuel tanker escorted by only 2 light cruisers. Phoenix Squadron, attack pattern Delta. "Take out the escorts first, then the tanker." The human ships came at the Krillians from 6 different directions at once. The escort ships, designed to fight single opponents in straight lines, couldn't handle the coordinated assault. Within minutes, Both were destroyed. The fuel tanker tried to run, but it was too slow and too big. The humans surrounded it and opened fire. The explosion lit up space for thousands of kilometers across the battlefield. Other human groups were having similar success. Captain Linda Hayes led her squadron against an ammunition convoy. Major Chris Walker's ships attacked a communication relay station. The Krillians, focused on their honor-bound battle with the Council fleet, didn't notice what was happening to their support structure. But Lieutenant Thompson noticed something else. "Sir, the main Krillian fleet is starting to slow down. Their rate of fire is decreasing." Rodriguez checked his tactical display. She was right. Without their supply ships, the Krillian warships were running low on fuel and ammunition. For the first time in the battle, their assault was weakening. "All human ships, target the heavy cruiser Ironclad Vengeance," Rodriguez ordered. "It's separated from the main fleet. We can take it." "Captain, that ship is 5 times our size," protested Davis. "Our weapons can barely scratch their armor." "Then we don't attack their armor," Rodriguez replied. "Thompson, scan for weak points. Engine exhausts, weapon ports, anything that's not heavily protected." The human ships swarmed around the massive Krillian cruiser like angry hornets. Instead of trying to break through its thick armor, they targeted its engines, weapons, and sensor arrays. The Krillian ship fired desperately, but it couldn't hit the fast-moving human vessel's within an hour. The Ironclad Vengeance was dead in space. Its engines were destroyed, its weapons silenced, its crew trapped inside a floating tomb. News of the victory spread quickly through both fleets. For the first time in galactic history, a Krillian warship had been defeated by an inferior force. The effect on morale was immediate. The Council ships, inspired by the human success, began fighting with renewed energy. The Krillians, shocked by the destruction of one of their vessels, started making mistakes they had never made before. Emperor Vex Talon's voice roared across the communication channels. "Impossible. No one can defeat Krillian warriors. It is against the natural order." But Rodriguez was already planning the next attack. "All human ships, regroup at coordinate 77 Alpha. We're going after their command ship." "Ben, that's suicide," Admiral Carter warned. "Maybe," Rodriguez replied, watching the massive Dreadnought Eternal on his display. "But these Krillians have one big weakness. They can't imagine losing. That makes them predictable. And predictable enemies can be beaten." As the human ships regrouped, Rodriguez thought about Earth, about the people counting on them to buy time for the evacuation, about the children who would never grow up if the Krillians won. The galaxy's most feared warriors had ruled through terror for 1,000 years, but they had never faced humans before. They had never encountered a species that fought dirty, thought creatively, and refused to give up no matter how bad things looked. The battle was far from over, but for the first time since the fighting began, Rodriguez felt hope. The Krillians could be beaten. It would take everything humanity had, but it could be done. The Phoenix and her sister ships turned toward the enemy flagship, ready to show the galaxy that even the most feared species could be defeated by those who refused to fear them. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. A Krillian warship had been destroyed. For the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy's most feared warriors had been defeated in battle. On 100 worlds, people looked up at the stars, with something they hadn't felt in centuries, hope. But in the heart of the Krillian Empire, on the fortress world of Kithara, Emperor Vex Talon raged like a wounded beast. He stood in his war room, surrounded by his most trusted generals, and his yellow eyes burned with fury. "Explain to me," he growled, his claws scraping against the metal table, "how a single human ship destroyed the Ironclad Vengeance." "General." Korvax, scarred from 100 battles, kept his head low. "My emperor, it was not one ship. The humans attacked with 30 vessels, using tactics we have never encountered. 30 ships against one of our heavy cruisers? Vex Talon's voice rose to a roar. The ironclad Vengeance could destroy 100 enemy ships. Yes, my Emperor, under normal circumstances. But the humans did not fight normally. They attacked from multiple directions, targeted our weak points, and used speed instead of strength. Vex Talon struck the table with his massive fist, leaving deep claw marks in the metal. Cowardly tactics, dishonorable warfare. True warriors face their enemies with strength and courage. Of course, my Emperor. But the humans appear to have no honor. They attack supply ships, avoid direct combat, and use deception as a weapon. This made Vex Talon even angrier. The Krillian way of war was ancient and sacred. Warriors met in honorable combat. The strongest survived, the weak died. It had worked for thousands of years against every enemy they had faced. And we will teach them about honor, the Emperor declared. Send the Crimson Guard. Let my personal warriors hunt down these human cowards and show them how real soldiers fight. Meanwhile, in the outer rim of Krillian space, Colonel Rick Barnes sat in the command center of the modified asteroid base the humans had built in secret. His Special Operations Division had been busy since the battle at Sigma Draconis, and the results were spread across dozens of star charts on the walls around him. Report, Barnes said to Captain Nancy Ford, his intelligence officer. Sir, we've successfully hit 17 Krillian supply depots in the past month. Their fuel reserves are down by 30% across 3 sectors. We've also destroyed 2 communication arrays and a military academy. Barnes nodded. The human strategy was working. While the Krillians focused on finding and destroying the human fleet, small teams of human soldiers were striking targets throughout their empire. It was guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale. What about the Crimson Guard? Barnes asked. They're hunting us, sir. 500 of the Empire's most elite warriors spread across 50 ships. They're following our strike teams, trying to predict our next target. Barnes smiled. Good. Let them chase us. The more ships they waste hunting ghosts, the fewer they have for their main offensive. At that moment, Lieutenant Commander Paul Davis entered the command center. His face was grim, and Barnes knew immediately that something had gone wrong. Sir, we've lost contact with Strike Team 7. They were supposed to hit the fuel depot at Xerion Prime. Barnes felt his stomach tighten. Strike Team 7 was led by Major Kate Sullivan, one of his best officers. When was their last transmission? 18 hours ago. They reported successful infiltration of the depot. Then nothing. This was bad news. If the Krillians had captured Sullivan's team, they might learn about the human base. Worse, they might discover the locations of other strike teams. Sir, said Captain Ford, studying her displays, I'm detecting a large Krillian fleet moving toward the Vega system. It's not following any of our strike teams. It's heading for the Galactic Council's emergency supply depot. Barnes understood immediately. The Krillians weren't just hunting humans anymore. They were going after the Council's ability to support their defense fleet. If they destroyed the supply depot at Vega, the Council ships would run out of fuel and ammunition within weeks. How long before they reach Vega? Barnes asked. 48 hours, sir. Barnes thought quickly. The Council fleet was too far away to intercept the Krillian attack. But there was another option, one that was incredibly dangerous but might just work. Ford, send a message to all strike teams. Tell them to converge on the Vega system. We're going to stop this attack. Sir, we only have 12 operational teams left. That's fewer than 300 soldiers. The Krillian fleet has over 50 ships. I know the odds, Captain, but we're not going to fight their ships. We're going to fight smarter than that. 2 days later, the Krillian fleet arrived at Vega to find the system apparently empty. The Supply Depot orbited the fourth planet, a massive structure filled with everything the Council fleet needed to continue fighting. It looked completely UNDEFENDD. Admiral Vic Var, commanding the Krillian force, was suspicious. Scan the entire system. Look for human ships. Nothing on sensors, Admiral, reported his tactical officer. The system appears to be abandoned. The humans are cowards, but they are not fools. They would not leave such a valuable target unprotected. Continue scanning. But the Krillians found nothing, because the humans weren't hiding in space. They were already inside the supply depot, having infiltrated it days earlier using captured Krillian shuttles and uniforms taken from prisoners. Colonel Barnes crouched in the depot's main storage bay, surrounded by containers of fuel and ammunition. His soldiers were spread throughout the massive structure, each team in position for what he hoped would be the most devastating ambush in galactic history. All teams, report status, Barnes whispered into his communicator. Team Alpha in position. Team Beta ready. Team Gamma standing by. One by one, all 12 teams confirmed they were ready. Barnes watched through a small window as the Krillian ships approached the depot. Soon, they would dock and send boarding parties to secure the facility. That's when the trap would spring. The first Krillian shuttle, attached to docking port 7. Barnes watched as 20 armored warriors marched into the depot, their claws clicking on the metal floor. They moved with the confidence of soldiers who had never known defeat. Team Charlie, you're up, Barnes whispered. The Krillians never saw it coming. Human soldiers emerged from hiding places throughout the corridor, using flashbang grenades and smoke bombs to confuse their enemies. The Krillians, trained for honorable combat in open spaces, couldn't adapt to fighting in the maze of corridors and storage rooms. Within minutes, all 20 Krillian warriors were down. The humans moved quickly, stripping them of weapons and communication devices. Phase 2, Barnes ordered. Using the captured Krillian communicators, the humans began sending false reports to the ships outside. Depot secured, came the voice of Sergeant Mike Taylor, speaking in the Krillian language he had learned from prisoners. No resistance encountered, beginning transfer of supplies. More Krillian shuttles docked with the depot. Each one carried soldiers who expected to find their comrades in control of the facility. Instead, they found carefully planned ambushes that picked them off, squad by squad. The brilliance of the plan was its simplicity. The Krillians expected the humans to attack their ships. Instead, the humans had turned the supply depot itself into a weapon. Every corridor was a kill zone, every storage room a potential ambush site. Admiral Vic Var began to grow suspicious when his boarding parties stopped reporting. Lieutenant, contact boarding team 7. No response, Admiral. All teams have gone silent. Impossible. Send another shuttle. But Barnes was ready for that too. As the new shuttle approached, Captain Ford's team hit it with explosives they had placed on the docking port. The shuttle was destroyed before it could deliver its troops. Admiral, shouted the Krillian sensor operator. Explosion on docking. Port 3 were under attack. But under attack by what? The Krillians still couldn't see any human ships. Their enemies seemed to be ghosts, striking from nowhere and vanishing just as quickly. The trap was working perfectly. The Krillian fleet was paralyzed, unable to capture the supply depot, but unwilling to destroy it and lose the valuable supplies. Meanwhile, Barnes and his soldiers controlled the depot from within, turning it into an unassailable fortress. All teams begin Phase 3, Barnes ordered. The humans had spent days preparing the depot's most dangerous cargo, experimental weapons and unstable fuel compounds that the Council had been developing. Now they began moving these materials into position for the final phase of their plan. Admiral Vic Var was growing desperate. Half his boarding parties were missing, His remaining shuttles were too afraid to dock, and he still had no idea how. Many humans were inside the depot. "Sir," said his communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from inside the depot. Put it through." Colonel Barnes' voice filled the Krillian command ridge. "Admiral Vekvar, this is Colonel Rick Barnes of the Human Defense Force. Your soldiers are now our prisoners. Your mission has failed. I suggest you withdraw before we demonstrate what happens to Krillian fleets that threaten civilian targets." Vekvar roared with rage. "Human coward! Face me in honorable combat." "Sorry, Admiral. We don't do honorable combat. We do effective combat. You have 10 minutes to leave this system, or we'll show you just how effective we can be." The transmission ended, leaving Vekvar staring at his displays in frustration. He had 50W. The explosion lit up the Vega system like a second sun. The supply depot, packed with experimental weapons and unstable fuel, detonated with the force of a small star. The blast wave caught 3 Krillian ships that had moved too close, tearing them apart in seconds. Admiral Vekvar watched in horror as the depot vanished in a ball of fire. With it went millions of tons of supplies that the Council fleet desperately needed. But more importantly, it sent a message that echoed across the galaxy. Humans would destroy anything rather than let it fall into Krillian hands. "Sir," whispered his tactical officer, "what about our boarding parties?" Vekvar said nothing. 200 Krillian warriors had been inside that depot. 200 of the Empire's finest soldiers, dead because he had underestimated the humans. The thought made his claws shake with rage, but the humans hadn't died in the explosion. In the final moments before detonation, Colonel Barnes and his soldiers had escaped in captured Krillian shuttles, disappearing into space before the blast could reach them. It was the ultimate insult, using Krillian ships to escape from a trap. That had killed Krillian warriors. The news of the Vega incident reached Emperor Vextalon within hours. For the first time in his reign, the mighty emperor felt something he had never experienced before: fear. Not fear for his own life, but fear that his empire might actually lose this war. "How?" he demanded of his assembled generals. "How do these primitive humans continue to defeat us?" General Korvax, now the most senior officer after the disasters, at Sigma Draconis in Vega, tried to explain. "My emperor, they do not fight as we do. They use tactics that have no honor, no glory. They hide, they run, they strike from shadows. Then we will drag them into the light." Vextalon roared, "Send orders to all fleet commanders. No more hunting small groups of humans. Gather the entire Imperial Navy at Zarian. We will strike directly at the heart of Council space and force these cowards to face us in open battle." This was exactly what Captain Rodriguez had been hoping for. From his command ship, now hidden in the asteroid fields of the Outer Rim, he watched as Krillian fleets from across the Empire began moving toward their gathering point at Zarian Prime. "They're doing exactly what we predicted," Lieutenant Thompson reported, "pulling their forces back to protect their core worlds en masse for a single decisive strike." "Good," Rodriguez replied. "That gives us the opening we need for Operation Trojan Horse." Operation Trojan Horse was the most audacious plan in human military history. While the Krillians gathered their strength, the humans had been busy capturing and refitting enemy ships. They now had over 200 vessels that looked Krillian from the outside, but were crewed by human soldiers. Carter's voice came over the secure communication channel. "Ben, are you sure about this? If the deception fails, we'll lose half our remaining forces." "It won't fail, Admiral. We've studied their military protocols for months. We know their codes, their formations, their ceremonies. The Krillians are so arrogant, they'll never suspect that their own ships could be turned against them." The plan was simple in concept, but incredibly complex in execution. The human-controlled Krillian ships would join the Imperial fleet at Zarian, pretending to be reinforcements from a distant sector. Once inside the Krillian formation, they would wait for the perfect moment to strike. That moment would come during the coronation of conquest, a sacred Krillian ceremony where Emperor Vex Talon would declare his dominion over the galaxy. The entire Imperial fleet would be in perfect formation, completely focused on the ceremony. That's when the humans would reveal themselves. Captain Helen Brooks stood on the bridge of the captured Krillian dreadnought she had renamed U's Retribution. Her crew had spent weeks learning to operate the alien systems, and now they could run the massive ship as well as any Krillian crew. All stations report ready, announced her first officer, Commander Nip Price. Weapons charged, engines online, communications synchronized with the rest of the fleet. Brooks nodded. In a few hours, they would drop out of hyperspace at Zarian Prime and begin the most dangerous deception in human history. If they were discovered, the war would be over. But if they succeeded, they might just break the Krillian Empire forever. The Imperial fleet at Zarian was a sight that would have terrified any normal enemy. Over 9,000 warships filled the space around the planet, arranged in perfect ceremonial formation. At the center was the massive dreadnought Eternal Emperor, Vex Talon's flagship, surrounded by rings of smaller vessels like a deadly flower. Unidentified fleet, identify yourselves. Came the challenge from Zarian Traffic Control. Captain Rodriguez, disguised as a Krillian admiral, responded in perfect Krillian. This is Admiral Kethvox of the Outer Rim Defense Fleet, reporting with reinforcements for His Imperial Majesty. Admiral Kethvox, you are cleared to take position in Formation Ring 7. Glory to the Empire. Glory to the Empire, Rodriguez replied, cutting the transmission and allowing himself a small smile. The first hurdle was cleared. The human ships took their assigned positions without incident. To any observer, they looked like just another group of Krillian vessels joining the vast armada. The deception was perfect. Hours passed as more ships arrived from across the Empire. The Krillians were gathering the largest fleet in their history, determined to crush the Council once and for all. But hidden among their ranks were 200 human warriors, waiting for their moment. Finally, the ceremony began. Emperor Vex Talon's image appeared on screens throughout the fleet, his massive form imposing even in hologram. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, wearing the ancient armor of Krillian emperors, his claws gleaming in the ceremonial light. Warriors of the Empire, his voice boomed across space. Today we claim our birthright. Today we conquer the last free worlds and bring order to the galaxy. For too long, the weak have sheltered behind their councils and treaties. No more. The assembled fleet roared its approval, thousands of Krillian voices joining in a war cry that had echoed across centuries of conquest. The humans think their cowardly tactics can defeat us, Vex Talon continued. They are wrong. After we crush the Council, we will hunt down every human ship, every human world, every human life. The species that dared to challenge us will be erased from history. This was the moment Captain Brooks had been waiting for. All ships, this is Admiral Brooks. Execute Operation Trojan Horse. Show these monsters what humans are really capable of. Across the Krillian formation, 200 ships suddenly revealed their true nature. Human voices replaced Krillian ones on the communication channels. Weapons that had been powered down came online. Ships that had been in perfect formation began turning toward their neighbors. The effect was devastating. The humans were inside the Krillian defensive perimeter, positioned among the most important ships in the fleet. They opened fire at point-blank range, targeting command vessels and communication arrays. In the first 30 seconds, over 100 Krillian ships were destroyed or crippled. Emperor Vex Talon stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Red dots were appearing throughout his fleet, as ship after ship reported attacks from vessels that should have been allies. His perfect formation was collapsing into chaos. Impossible. He roared. How are humans inside our formation? General. Korvax was frantically trying to coordinate a response, but the confusion was too great. Krillian ships were firing on each other, unable to tell friend from foe in the chaos. The humans had turned the Empire's greatest strength, their rigid discipline and formation fighting, into a fatal weakness. Captain, Brooks guided the UES Retribution through the battle like a dancer. The massive dreadnought's weapons tore through. Krillian cruisers, while its thick armor shrugged off return fire. Her crew fought with the skill of veterans, even though most had never seen combat before volunteering for this mission. Target the flagship, Brooks ordered. Take us straight at the dreadnought Eternal. Ma'am, that ship is 3 times our size, warned Commander Price. It's the most heavily armed vessel in the Krillian fleet. Then we better not give it time to use those weapons. Brooks replied grimly. The UES Retribution charged through the burning wreckage of the Krillian fleet, heading directly for Emperor Vex Talon's flagship. Other human ships followed, creating a spearhead that drove deep into the heart of the enemy formation. Vex Talon watched the approaching human ships with growing fury. These creatures had infiltrated his sacred fleet, turned his own vessels against him, and now dared to challenge his flagship directly. It was an insult beyond bearing. All weapons target the leading dreadnought, he commanded. Destroy it immediately. The dreadnought Eternal's massive guns swiveled to target the UES Retribution. Plasma beams that could melt asteroids lanced out across space, but Brooks was ready for them. Her ship danced between the shots, using the wreckage of destroyed vessels as cover. Return fire, Brooks ordered. All batteries full spread. The 2 dreadnoughts exchanged devastating volleys. The space between them filled with energy beams and exploding missiles. Both ships shook under the impact of weapons that could level cities. But Brooks had an advantage that Vex Talon didn't expect. Her crew had studied every weakness in Krillian ship design, every flaw in their armor and weapons. They targeted specific points: engine exhausts, weapon cooling. 6 months after the Battle of Zirian Prime, Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the observation deck of Luna Station, Earth's new moon base. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see ships from across the galaxy docked at the expanding facility. Zephyrian science vessels worked alongside Veltar cargo ships. Luminary medical craft shared space with human destroyers. The Galactic Council had moved its headquarters to Luna Station after the old Nexus Prime was deemed too vulnerable. Now, representatives from hundreds of species gathered in chambers, built by human engineers, protected by human soldiers, and governed by laws that humans had helped write. Admiral Carter, the Council is ready for your briefing, announced Captain Jake Morrison, now serving as her aide after his promotion. Carter nodded and made her way to the main chamber. The sight still amazed her. Beings from across the galaxy, many of whom had never met before the war, now worked together as if they had been allies for centuries. The Krillian invasion had united the galaxy in ways that thousands of years of diplomacy had failed to achieve. The chamber fell silent as Carter approached the central podium. Counselor Zetha Rune of the Zephyrian Republic gestured for her to begin. Honored representatives, Carter said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. I'm pleased to report that the integration of former Krillian territories into the Council structure is proceeding ahead of schedule. She activated the holographic display, showing a map of the galaxy. Large sections that had once been marked in the red of the Krillian Empire now showed the blue of Council space. 237 former Krillian worlds have voted to join the Council. Reconstruction efforts are underway on planets devastated by centuries of military rule. The Krillian people themselves are adapting to their new circumstances better than we had hoped. This last point had surprised everyone. After Emperor Vextalan's defeat, the Krillian Empire had collapsed into civil war. Different generals had fought for control, using the same brutal tactics they had once employed against other species. The result was predictable. They had nearly destroyed themselves. But some Krillians had chosen a different path. War Chief Kex Moore, who had commanded the defense of the Krillian homeworld, had been among the first to approach human negotiators. He was now sitting in the chamber, his massive form dwarfing the chair designed for smaller species. The transition has not been without challenges, Carter continued. Many Krillians struggle to understand concepts like democracy and individual rights. For 1,000 years, their society was built on strength and hierarchy. Teaching them to value cooperation over conquest is an ongoing process. Kex Moore stood, his yellow eyes focused on Carter, with what she had learned was respect rather than hostility. Admiral Carter speaks truth, he said in heavily accented but clear English. My people are ... learning. It is difficult to forget the old ways. But humans have shown us that strength comes not from ruling others, but from working with them. Chamber buzzed with quiet conversation. Many council members still found it hard to believe that Krillians could change. But Kex Moore was living proof that even the galaxy's most warlike species could adapt. What about military preparations? Asked Ambassador Velkris of the Veltar Confederation. The reports from the Galactic Rim are troubling. Carter's expression grew serious. That brings me to our next topic. Long-range sensors have detected massive energy signatures moving toward our space from beyond the galactic edge. Preliminary analysis suggests they are artificial in origin and extremely ancient. The holographic display shifted to show the edge of the galaxy. Strange patterns of energy moved through empty space, following paths that defied normal stellar mechanics. We believe we are facing contact with what human scientists call the Ancients, a machine intelligence that ruled the galaxy millions of years ago. According to fragmentary records found in Krillian archives, they were the original builders of many of the hyperspace lanes we use today. A chill fell over the chamber. The Krillians had been terrifying enough, but they were at least organic beings who could be reasoned with or defeated. Machines that had existed for millions of years were something else entirely. General Alex Turner, recently promoted to head the new Galactic Defense Academy, stepped forward. The good news is that we have time to prepare. Our best estimates suggest the ancient constructs won't reach inhabited space for at least 18 months. We're using that time to implement new defense strategies based on lessons learned from the Krillian War. Turner activated another display, this one showing military formations that would have been impossible before the war. Human ships worked alongside vessels from dozens of species, their crews trained in tactics that combined the best ideas from across the galaxy. The Zephyrians have shared their shield technology with us. The Veltar have provided advanced sensors. The Luminari have developed new medical techniques that can treat injuries from any species. Even the Krillians have contributed, teaching us about their armor and weapons technology. This was perhaps the most remarkable change of all. The species that had once lived in fear of each other now shared their most advanced technologies freely. The humans had done more than defeat the Krillian Empire. They had created something entirely new. Captain Ben Rodriguez, now commanding the defense station at the galaxy's edge, appeared on the main screen via quantum communication. Admiral, we've detected another ancient signal. It's different from the others, more complex, almost like language. Carter frowned. Any idea what it means? Our linguistics team is working on it, but Admiral ... Rodriguez paused, looking uncertain. I think they're trying to communicate with us. This caused an immediate uproar in the chamber. Representatives began talking at once, their voices creating a babel of different languages and concerns. Silence. Called Counselor Zetharoon, his ancient authority cutting through the noise. Admiral Carter, what are your recommendations? Carter thought for a moment before answering. 6 months ago, she would have recommended preparing for war. That was what everyone expected when facing an unknown threat. But the humans had changed more than just the galaxy's military situation. They had changed how problems were solved. I recommend we try talking to them, she said simply. The chamber erupted again, but this time with a different energy. It was the sound of beings who had learned that the impossible could become possible. 3 weeks later, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell sat in the command chair of the exploration vessel UES Horizon. Her ship was part of a joint fleet that included vessels from 20 different species, all working together to make first contact with beings older than their civilizations. The ancient construct they had found was enormous, a sphere of crystalline material and flowing energy that was larger than most space stations. It pulsed with patterns of light that seemed to follow mathematical sequences, as if the machine itself was trying to solve some cosmic equation. Signal analysis complete, reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Tom Bradley. The patterns definitely show signs of intelligence. It's trying to communicate, but the language is unlike anything in our databases. Mitchell nodded. This was the moment they had been preparing for. Open a channel, all frequencies. She took a deep breath and spoke words that would be remembered for as long as sentient life existed in the galaxy. Unknown vessel. This is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell of the United Earthship Horizon, representing the Galactic Council. We are a coalition of organic life forms seeking peaceful contact. Please respond if you can understand this message. 4 long moments. There was only silence. And the ancient construct began to change. Its crystal surfaces shifted and flowed like liquid, forming new patterns that hurt to look at directly. When it finally responded, its voice was like the sound of stars being born. Organic life ... unexpected. We have slept for many cycles. The galaxy has changed. You are different from those who came before. Mitchell felt her heart racing. They were actually talking to beings that had existed when the galaxy was young. We seek knowledge and friendship. Our species have learned to work together despite our differences. We hope we can learn from you as well. Working together. The ancient voice seemed puzzled by the concept. This is ... new. When we last walked among the stars, organic life fought only for dominance. Each species sought to destroy all others. We withdrew to prevent their extinction. But you ... you are united? We learned that cooperation is stronger than conquest, Mitchell replied. A young species taught us that lesson. They showed us that even the weakest can defeat the strongest if they refuse to give up. Interesting. We would learn more of this concept. Perhaps the organic experiment was not a failure after all. The ancient construct moved closer to the Council fleet, its massive form dwarfing even the largest ships. But instead of threat, Mitchell sensed curiosity. We offer knowledge, the ancient voice continued. Technologies beyond your current understanding. Secrets of space and time that could advance your civilizations by millions of years. In exchange, we would learn about this ... cooperation, this unity among different life forms. Mitchell smiled. Once again, humanity's greatest strength was proving to be their ability to make friends with their enemies. I think we can arrange